Welcome to MacGyver's Workshop, where you never know what we're going to be working on next. If you're not too careful, you just might learn something.
Hi there, and welcome back to MacGyver's Workshop, where you never know what we're going to be working on next, and if you're not too careful, you just might learn something. So, in part 3 of our Corvette project here, we've made some significant progress. Had to do a lot of parts cleaning. Still not complete yet, but we're going along in stages here. So let me use the old GoPro here and we'll show you where we're at. We've got the front of the motor cleaned up real good. It was just totally caked in just oil spooge over the years. We've got the new timing chain on. We will go ahead and pre-lube that once we get our timing cover ready to go back on. We've made an attempt as best we could to clean up the front cross member. Now we're going to go ahead and work on our timing cover. And I'm going to come over here. Okay, so after a bunch of cleaning, parts cleaning, we've got our timing cover here ready. And I wanted to show y'all for the water pump, you got a bit of a special issue here, because what happens to most folks is they'll put a new seal in there and it will actually leak worse when they go back together with it. And that's because that inner lip will get kind of curled back. And so they make this tool, and what it does is it kind of spreads that inner lip out. So when you're driving the seal in, it won't allow that seal to curl back on itself. Now, for us, since we have the timing cover off, what we'll do is we will put this, and I'll take you over here and show you. We will put this tool here on the water pump shaft, and then we'll lube everything up real good, and then as we slide the timing cover on gently, it will expand that seal to where it won't curl back on itself as we're pushing it on there. Because the last thing you want when doing a job like this is to have to do it twice, trust me. We'll come back and I'll show you how I press these seals in without having to use a hammer. All right, so we're over here at our clean parts table, and I have my timing cover here, all recently despooged, if you will. What we're going to do here is we're going to press the new seals in, and if you can do it this way, it's always preferable. If this were on the car, we wouldn't be able to, but hammering seals in with a socket is sketchy at best most times. Obviously, it can be done. It's been done for years. We all do it. But when you're hammering on it with a socket, if you get off just a little bit, you could distort the seal as it's going in, and it doesn't ride properly on the shaft, and you have a leak. Especially with these. The forums are littered with posts of, change my seal for the water pump and now it leaks worse than it did before. Well, there's a reason for that. And what has happened is that the seal has gotten distorted upon installation, and it's not riding correctly on the shaft, and ergo you have a leak. If you have the opportunity, it's always best to be able to put a seal in this way. Now I've already pressed this in because I'm an idiot and I didn't think about it beforehand, but my saving grace is I can do the same with the Optispark and front crankshaft seal to show you how to actually install it safely. With the timing cover off, we have the luxury of pressing this seal in, or these seals, in a manner that will ensure that they're drawn in nice and even, and they line up, you know, right where they're supposed to be, flush with the surface, and, or in the case of the crank seal, seated at the bottom of its bore. And you do that by using a simple bolt and nut and washers, and hopefully, if you're lucky enough to have a bushing driver set. And what it is it's a bunch of thick discs of all different sizes that are used for pulling or putting bushings in, or bearing races and what have you, but they also work great for seals. I've got 2 of them out here, and what we shall do is, I've got my, actually I don't need that one, got my bolt, a long enough bolt, and we'll put it through here, and we're doing the Optispark seal, and we will pop this puppy in there like so, and then we will put another one of these discs on top, and a nice washer. And what this does essentially is it forces that seal to go in evenly, because that's the worst thing that can happen to you when you're putting the seal in, is you get it cocked sideways, and then you try to go to the high side of the seal and tap on it to fix it, and that's when you distort the seal and you're done. Then it's going to leak no matter what. This way, we're fortunate that we have a nice flat surface for this to ride on, and then of course this is going to ride on the seal itself, and then all we do is we just tighten it down and draw that seal in, and maybe if it looks like it's going in there a little cockeyed, well, that means you're not centered in that seal very well. And if you go to make any corrections, if you do it with these bushing drivers, then it makes the correction evenly, and it will not distort the seal. Okay, because that's your enemy, is messing up the circular integrity, if you will, of that seal. And then we just tighten it down until both discs are flat against the surface of the timing cover. And we'll take our nut off of here. And voila, that seal is drawn in nice and even. And and this works with this works with any size seal. I mean, look at this. This is a huge seal here for the crankshaft. And in this case, like it's going to be highly unlikely you may find a washer big enough, regular washer big enough for that. So that's where having one of these bushing driver kits comes in real handy, because then you have, perfect little biscuits like this that are plenty big enough to do what we need to do. And then what we'll do is we will set this in the back side here, and if you try to center it as best you can, put your seal in here. Now see, we're out of bolt here, so we're going to have to get a longer bolt, but that's okay. Okay, so we got us a slightly longer bolt. Let's see how this one does. big fat one for that. You snug it up, and then you kind of look and make sure you're set nice and even here. And if you get it cocked sideways in there, it's no big deal. You know, you just kind of pop it out of here and straighten yourself up and go back to it. Try again. Sometimes this is more art than science. Sometimes it might help if you're like off the side of the table here, and that way you can just lay your seal on there and let gravity do its thing. And keep everything nice and even for you. Because the whole importance here is to draw that seal in evenly. And continue on until the nut gets tight, which means both discs are flat against the timing cover. And Bob's your uncle, as they say. And you've gotten it in there, you got it without distorting the integrity of the seal. And this timing cover is ready to go back on the motor. Okay, now we're ready to get our timing cover to go back on the front of the motor. I've already done a little pre-lube, light pre-lube of the timing chain and the gears and water pump drive and all that. So we don't want that starting up dry if we can help it. Looking at the back side of the timing cover here, I found that the timing cover gasket was stuck pretty good, both on the timing cover itself in places and on the front of the engine block. And it took a good bit to get it, and on the block side, the water pump gaskets off. So just be ready for that. And then just when you think you got it all done and ready to go, you'll notice that you'll still see little bits of gasket material, and you want to go ahead and get that off of there. You just do that with a single edge razor blade, and try not to nick the aluminum if you can help it. And you definitely don't want to go to town on one of these things with one of those Rolock discs, or cookies as we call them, because it will cut into the aluminum and cause a leak, because the sealing surface will not be perfectly flat anymore. I've seen some folks have to double up on timing cover gaskets because somebody boogered up the surface of the housing. We have our gasket here. The best way to do this is to go ahead and put it on the engine block first, because that's where your dowel pins and guides are. And then what I use is this stuff here. Now, I'm not shilling or selling out or anything like that. This is just something that I learned way back in the day from an old timer, and it has served me well ever since. Permatex aviation forma gasket, and this stuff, it will stick that gasket to the block and hold it for you while you put your pieces together. And it's a bit of a pain. If you get any on you, it's a challenge getting it off, but it works. I mean, that's just all there is to it. So let's get over to the front of the motor and get this gasket set on there. And then for good measure, we'll put a real thin coating of that forma gasket on here. And what that will do is, not that it's going to help me any, but the next guy who goes into this thing will be grateful, because it will help the gasket and the parts come apart a lot better and not be hell and high water trying to get the gasket off both the block and the timing cover. All right, now we are ready to go ahead and install our timing cover. Now, before you get started on that, you want to make sure that you have something to lube up the water pump drive shaft. And I use, I mean, you could use motor oil, you could use assembly lube, whatever. My preference is I use this transmission assembly lube, which is really, really super lubey, slimy, sticky. You know, it sticks, and it really works as an excellent lubricant for seals, which is what this is designed for inside a transmission anyway. Now, what I do is I will go ahead and I'll brush just a little tiny bit around in each seal first, and then there's also a bushing surface inside here, inside the timing cover, and we will go ahead and do that while we're standing here. You don't need to put a ton of it in there, you just need to coat it lightly. A little bit goes a long way with this stuff. Now just keep those seals from starting up and running dry. Get the inside of this seal here real good, and then I'm gonna lube this kind of like a bushing surface back here. We'll do that, and then I will go ahead and lube up the sealing surface on this water pump drive shaft real good. And also, we're going to put our installation tool on here, and we're going to lube this up real good so that when we slide that timing cover on there, that seal will just gradually expand and slide onto its sealing surface without curling under. If that seal curls under that inner lip, you're done. I mean, it's going to leak. One other thing that you have to do, as I talked about that aviation forma gasket, you really want to put the gasket on the engine block first, because when the gasket comes out of the package, it's a little bit springy, you know, and it's going to kind of try to fold in down here at the bottom. So putting it on the timing cover is going to be a bit of a pain, because it's going to try and move on you. But if you put it on the engine block first, you've got the dowel pins to hold it in place. So what I do is I use the cardboard backing that the timing cover seal and gasket kit came in, and lay it on there and paint the side that's going to stick to the block. And what that does is basically is, number one, you're not in there trying to paint the block, and two, it'll minimize how much of this stuff you get on your hands, because I mean, it will get on you, and it's some sticky stuff. We have that at the ready, and of course I always Yeah, keep a paper towel to get that stuff off my fingers. Also keep a shop rag handy, because where your water pump, your water outlets are on the front of the block, there's going to be water dripping out of there. So you want to try your best to get that water out of there so that your sealing surface stays dry. That way our sealer will stick real good, our aviation formagasket stuff. And then we will take our gasket here and line it up on these two dowel pins right here, and then line it up on these dowel pins down here at the bottom. Now, one thing I should mention with the timing cover here, you only want to take and use the short screws or short bolts to install the timing cover at first. And I've marked these with a Sharpie just to show you. The longer ones here are for the Optispark, so I've kind of colored them in with a Sharpie there. After making sure everything's nice and lubed up, we've pre-lubed our timing chain, our water pump drive gear, all that stuff. Double check, triple check, quadruple check your timing marks here. Make sure you're at top dead center. Your little slot on their Optispark drive gear should be at the 6 o'clock position. And also, when you put if you replace the timing chain and you put these bolts back in, you want to make sure you've sprayed the holes out with some brake cleaner or carb cleaner or whatever, and then blew it out with compressed air to dry those threads up. And then clean your bolts real good and coat them with a little bit of thread locker, and then tighten them down to whatever your particular torque spec for your application is. So you did, of course, remember to clean all your bolts, right? I hope so. Now, very gingerly, by focusing on the top here, we want to ease our timing cover on over this tool here, this installation tool. Because right here, this is the deciding factor whether you get to do this job twice or not. Now we want to make sure you may want to keep your finger on here and just want to ease this timing cover on here. And the whole time you're doing it, just remember to tell yourself, I don't want to do this twice. And there you go. All right, there you have it for that. And then take all your short bolts and start them in here. Now, I don't know how it's going to be on your vehicle. This one in a 94, you never know whether the fasteners you're working with are going to be metric or standard. Now, these are 3/8, not 10 millimeter as you would expect. And what I'll do is we'll just snug these up. Don't get crazy with it. What I'll do is I'll kind of do a crisscross pattern here. And then just check each one of them. You will find that as you draw it down, other ones may have loosened up. Just make sure they're all snug. With the water pump drive shaft, after you have all this put in, you want to make sure that you replace this little O-ring right here. When you get your timing cover gasket kit, you're going to notice that it comes with 2 rubber O-rings, and one goes here and one will go on the stub shaft sticking out of the water pump. And then you have this coupler here that goes between the two, and this just splines on here. Now this coupler does go on only one way, or it's supposed to anyway. The side with this little groove here should always go towards the engine. When you first look at this, sometimes you may not even notice that there's actually an O-ring here. But if you get, a sharp pick or whatever and just press against that, it will shatter, because most likely that O-ring is going to be hard and brittle. And you pop it off there like that, and you'll see that there's a definite groove there. And then put your new O-ring on there. What you want to do is use just a little bit of wheel bearing grease here, not a lot, but just to put on those splines. Let a little bit of that grease get on that O-ring. We are at the point where we're ready to install our Optispark. This is a 1994, so it had the non-vented Optispark, or Gen 1 Optispark, whatever you want to call it. Now, in 1995, because they had so much trouble out of it, they went to a vented design and changed the distributor cap, and they use vacuum, engine vacuum, to pull air through the inside of this unit to help cut down on the moisture building up in there and corrosion and such. So fortunately, it's relatively easy to convert. You just have to put a 95 distributor cap and rotor on it, and you make some minor modifications to the distributor itself, in that there are already 3 vent holes in the bottom of even the non-vented model. What you do is you plug 2 of the 3 up, and then you put an elbow here for a vacuum, and it has to be an elbow because otherwise you'd be running into the crank pulley there, or the crank hub. And then you run this through a vacuum check valve, and then we're also going to use an orifice, so that like a 10/1000 of an inch orifice. You don't want to pull hard vacuum through here, because you also have a mass airflow sensor on this motor, so you don't want it pulling in unmetered air. And then the port on the top of the cap, we'll run that into the air intake ahead of the mass airflow sensor, so it'll get filtered air, and it won't pull any trash through the distributor. And that's pretty much it, really. So we're going to go ahead and install this, and then we'll have to we'll route our vacuum lines and such. But for now, we just are worried about getting it installed on here, and we want our key spline, which is right there, pointing directly at 6 o'clock. And we should be able to, and there we go. That is the skadunk of success. Now we use those 3 long bolts that we had on the timing cover. Get those in there, You just want to gently snug them up first. Then once you're positive that you're seated in good and proper, and you can give them the final tightening here. And there you go. That Optispark is in there. We will need to ultimately route our vacuum lines accordingly, but now at this point, we will get our crank hub in there. We went ahead and put a sleeve on here. What that does is that gives the front crank seal a new proper surface to ride on. The installation of this is super simple. It usually comes with the tool. You just coat the hub with some red Loctite, and then you put it in the vise and draw it down until the tool bottoms out on the hub here, and you're done. So now I'm going to take we got this ring pops off from where the tool went, and then you just cut it with a pair of snips and pull it off. So we'll have to do that before we put the hub in, but just showing you what we did. I knocked that little installation lip there off, and she's all ready to go in. I've got a new bolt, and this is a pressed on hub, so it's not keyed. It's kind of important to maintain at least a relative indication of top dead center. We want to put this little arrow right here as close to straight up 12 o'clock, as we can get it, and then start to press the hub on. And there we go. We're ready. We can get our balancer on there. But before we do that, we're going to go ahead and route all our lines and plug our spark plug wires up and get all that situated.